State fans have every right to be upset about that one. Every right to be finding where the panic button is. Every right to be everything that I saw on social media as far as the reaction to that game. There were maybe taking it a step too far on, making sweeping generalizations about people's job security, but that is a game that makes you reevaluate things. After you showed, meaning the team, after the team showed all of that toughness, mentally, physically, all of that edge against Wake Forest, you're cool getting pushed around by Virginia Tech? A team that, quite frankly, doesn't have the dudes that Wake Forest has? That's bad. That's bad. We know you can do it now. That's something we've seen a few times over this college basketball season. A team goes out there and proves they have the ability to do something, and then they immediately turn around and don't do it, and we're going, wait a second, we know you can do that. We know you can play tough. We know you can have edge. We know you can be the more aggressive, more assertive team in an ACC basketball game because we just saw it. And then you have a game against Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech is not a powerhouse this season. I mean, I know a few years ago they won the ACC tournament. This team is not that. And they got everything they wanted in the second half against NC State. I'm fine with having one of those games, right? I was just listening to a podcast with Matt Barnes, and Matt Barnes was talking about guarding Kobe. And it was essentially, sometimes you play great defense, offense is just better, right? If I'm making Kobe work, that's a good day for me, right? Yeah. If he's making the shots, it's a good day for him too. But all I can do is make him work.
Yeah, if he makes that baseline fade away from 18, you're like, okay.
But if he's knocking down open threes and getting open layups, that's on the defense, right? That's on me. And Virginia Tech was getting all of the shots they wanted. It's a clean shot chart, right? It's threes and at the bucket. Threes and at the bucket. There's no long twos in their arsenal. Long twos are what you shoot when the defense has played great, the shot clock's winding down, and you have the ball, and you're like, all right, I guess this is okay. You take a long two. There were almost none of them. I'm watching the game going, are any of these shots not the ones that Virginia Tech drew up on the whiteboard before the game? Coach is circling it, going, if you catch it here, take the jumper. In the game, they're catching it there, they're taking the jumper. You got to make them do something they don't want to do. There's a lot of talk about where Bill Belichick's going to coach. Go full Bill Belichick. Take away what they do best, and if they beat you with what they do second best, you can live with it, but don't let them do what they want to do. Kevin Keatts, the head coach of NC State, talked about the defense in the second half, especially early in the second half, and how much of a letdown it was.
I thought early in the second half, we just kind of let those guys get comfortable. And once they got comfortable, they started playing really good basketball. Those two guys were on the top of our scouting report, and we ended up with, giving Couture 19. I know he got 8 of them from the free throw line, but they drove us. Like, we shouldn't be getting beat off the dribble and those type of things. And, that's the disappointment. And we haven't had many games where I could tell you that defensively we were not very good. But that particular half, the second half, we were not very good. And our defense has really saved us the entire year.
Now, I don't want to completely dismiss Virginia Tech. They have a couple of guys on the perimeter that can get streaky. You heard him bring up Couture, Padula, maybe even more so, the other guy he was mentioning there. So it's not like you were playing some absolute scrub, but it's less of what happened and more how it happened. Right? Like I said, if Padula and Couture are going to hit tough shots, they're going to hit tough shots. But if they're going to hit easy shots, you got to look at the man in the mirror. You got to stare at yourself a little bit. Meanwhile, even with, right, you go to the other side of the court, right, because there are a lot of teams that play bad defense or bad is the wrong word, less than desirable defense, but because their offense is so talented or so efficient or they can still win games. So, all right, State wasn't forcing Virginia Tech into bad shots. What were they doing on the other side? Even with Casey Morsell waking up out of his slumber, that team is still struggling to shoot threes. They are 11th out of the 15 ACC teams in three-point percentage, and the teams below them are the teams you don't want to be associated with. The Georgia Techs, the Louisvilles, the Notre Dames. You don't want to be associated with those teams. So here's what's happening, right? You're not getting the shots that you shoot at a high percentage at the most important spots, meaning down near the bucket and at the three-point line, and you're giving up the shots that the opposing team wants to. That's the Virginia Tech game in a nutshell. I don't think it's an effort thing. Right, I think everyone out there cares. The rotation, I'm still unaware of what the goal is with the rotation, simply because they could play so many guys, and all we hear about is how they have 8 starters, and all we hear about is how they have this, that, and the other. But it's still not predictable enough. I don't think the players can get into a rhythm knowing what they're going to be doing game in and game out, and that works for some. Right, I hear the logic of. Right, the rotation is completely based on your opponent, right? And do we have to play this guy, or is his skill set less suited to play against a team with more bigs or more shooting or whatever? But there has to be some element of it's about us, not them. And we're going to get our guys a minimum amount of X, Y, and Z, minimum amount of shots, minimum amount of minutes, whatever it is, and then you can tweak based on the opponent. I just look at that game and think so much of what was earned against Wake Forest was given right back against Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
So much of right, like Kevin Keatts in the postgame against Wake Forest, no one's ever going to say we're not tough again. Then you go to the next game and don't play tough. And I'm going like, maybe you're putting us in a tough spot if we can't say we can't say you're not tough. Right? Toughness is a thing, it's to use the cliche, or not even the cliche, the motivational phrase. A tough reputation, a reputation as being tough, is rented. It's not owned. You got to pay that rent every single game. You can't come out and say, we're tough because we were tough against Wake Forest, and then if you don't play great, you don't play that mentally tough against Virginia Tech, go, well, we already proved it against Wake, right? You can't take it away. It's, we can. We can take away that reputation.
It's like you did it once. Congrats.
Yeah.
Do it again.
And you did it once against an in-state opponent, right? You did it once against a team that was near with you and kind of that second tier of the ACC. You did it against one that you don't need to motivate for. Virginia Tech, a little bit further down, right? Another state, less heralded, had some bad losses. It's harder to get up for. It's harder to get your mindset wrapped around it, and you didn't do it. That one is frustrating. I'm not putting it all on Keatts either. I like to say in high school, you're responsible for 2 things as a coach: scheme and motivation. In college, you're responsible for 2 things as a coach: putting the roster together and scheme, right? Motivation, if you're a college athlete, motivation's on you, bud. Or if you're a college athlete, coach shouldn't have to be up there, win one for the Gipper. You should show up every game ready to play. Pro coaches have one thing: scheme. They got a GM to put together the roster. Players should be motivated because they're professionals. All they got to do is scheme. That's always how I saw it broken down. So I'm not putting this all on Keatts. Some of it is on Keatts. I'm not putting all of it on Keatts.
There is a level of I will say, someone who coached at college, there's a little level of motivation on a coach. But there are enough veteran guys on that team. Like DJ Burns is 6th year of college? Like Casey Morcell's in his 5th. Like they have enough veteran guys on that team. I mean, it's one thing if you have a group of just freshmen that just don't know any better and like one sophomore. And that's a veteran group. They've been through it and been through it together. At least a good chunk of them have. Like you should know this kind of stuff already.
Yeah, and even the guys they brought in, like you're bringing in O'Connell from Stanford. It's not like he came from a D3 school. This wasn't Duncan Robinson at Michigan out there, which is a strange reference to a Division III transfer.
Hey, don't knock on D3, man.
I'm not at all. But I'm saying if you go from or Andrew Carr, if you're going from the CAA to the ACC, all right. If you're going from Stanford to the ACC, it's a level up. Don't get me wrong, but you shouldn't be wide-eyed and how do we handle this?
Yeah,
you should be ready to roll. Is what I was getting at.